When you think of the most terrifying FNAF fan game, which games come to your mind? Fredbear's Fright? Sure. Five Nights at Candy's 3? Of course. Or even Junior's. All of these could be considered to be the scariest. But I think everyone always thinks about the joy of creation when they are asked this question, or they're just discussing FNAF fan games. Today, I want to explain to you what exactly makes the joy of creation so scary. Nixon, the creator of the game, was born on February 20th, 2001. He had two other projects preceding the joy of creation, that being Those Nights at Fredbear's and also Those Nights at Rachel's. Those Nights at Fredbear's did end up getting cancelled, so Nixon wasn't really able to let his true colors shine through this game. But he then made Those Nights at Rachel's. When this game first came out, it was played by YouTubers all around, and it's still sometimes played with more lesser known YouTubers, but people would go on to see what a great game maker Nixon actually was. He would then begin the production on The Joy of Creation. He'd go on to name the full series The Joy of Creation Story Mode. And this game went through several updates before the full game was finally completed. Multiple stages in the game went through completely different reworks, and now the full version, in my opinion, has the best mechanics out of all the ones that he could make. This is the game that, in my opinion, earned the title of the scariest FNAF fan game. Now, Nixon drew his inspiration from two outside games, being FNAF 4, of course, and The Boogeyman. He wanted to capture the feeling of both of them together, and in each section of the game, I feel like there are aspects from both of those games that really make them more frightening to play. Now, when you think about what makes this game so scary, you may say that it is the incredible level design, or some may say it's the really horrifying animatronic models. But most people say it's the story, and I definitely agree that the story is incredible and really unique. It's not the reason why this game is so scary. In my opinion, there is a completely different reason as to why this game is so frightening, and that is perception. To get into what I mean, we will have to go into each part of the game, and I will explain to you what is perceived that makes the game so terrifying in each section. We start with the bedroom. This is the introduction to the story where you play as Nick Coffin as a child, and you're tasked with surviving against the animatronics. We hear a phone call from a man identified as Mike or Michael Schmidt. He goes on to explain what to do in order to survive against each animatronic. Freddy comes from the window, appearing there, and you have to close the curtain and wait for an audio cue to know when he leaves. Bonnie comes from the door in front of your crib, knocking before he enters. Before he does enter though, you need to turn off the lamp behind you and sit down in the crib. This will cause him to leave. Now, similarly to Bonnie, Chica will just come in through the closet door. You need to just turn off the light and then not look at her when you hear a creaking noise. Foxy is definitely the most different out of all the others. He slowly creeps out from underneath your crib in different stages. Then he'll be right above you, and when you see him above you, you need to fake sleep in order to cause him to leave. Now, between each animatronic, this really creates a great juggling loop that allows for a good challenge. Now, like all stages, each one gives you a different perception of what makes this stage much more scarier than you would think. In the bedroom stage, you play as a child, which is unique in the fact that you are much smaller than the animatronics and they are much larger. I also feel like Nixon was trying to capture the feeling of a child's imagination, because usually children have a wilder imagination than most adults do. This, in my opinion, is what makes the bedroom so frightening. Nixon really captured the idea of a child's nightmare rather than just a memory. Within this game's lore, you relive a memory from different family members and remember what happened. Now, the next stage is one that is considered to be the hardest. Many YouTubers had tried and struggled against this stage. The living room stage is the stage that actually introduced me to this game in the first place. In the living room stage, you play as Val, the wife of Scott. In this stage, you're tasked with surviving in the living room. Now, similarly to the bedroom, you also get a call from Mike where he explains that you need to watch the TV and pause the animatronics, being Freddy and Foxy, from the left and right doors, and then get out of their line of sight in order to avoid them. Also, Bonnie will come from the double doors, and you have to watch his stages through the keyhole and avoid them when he comes as well. Chica will just jump scare you if you sit at the couch for longer than 10 seconds. She will just stun you though. The stage may have less complicated mechanics, but its juggle is something that I think is much more difficult. In this stage, I think that the fact that you have to hide constantly really amps the idea of somebody trying to break in. Now, Nixon in this stage I think really used creativity within the camera system and being able to pause the animatronics. All the pieces really come together greatly and make for a fun challenge. The stage after this one though is probably the one that is the most fun once you understand it. That being the office. Now between each section there are cutscenes of what happens when going into the next stage. Before the office stage, Scott is being chased by Ignited Freddy and runs through his house before he ends up at the office. Now opposed to the previous stages, Scott was the one who left the recordings explaining how to deal with the animatronics. Now in this stage, each animatronic has a different skill set that makes the game a little more chaotic. The office is set up with a door in the front, a door to the left, and a window to the right. Freddy can come from any sides of these, either the doors or the window. You have to either open the door or open the curtain and then flash him with a light to make him leave. On the desk there are 3 monitors viewing a side based off of which one you look at. Bonnie is a character that will always appear in these cameras, and all you have to do is not look at him. He's usually far off in one of the corners of the camera. If you do look at Bonnie when he's in one of the cameras, he will break the camera you're looking at for the rest of your run, so do not look at him directly if you see him. Foxy, like Bonnie, appears in the cameras as well, but opposed to Bonnie, your job is only to look at Foxy when you see him in the cameras, which will cause him to disappear. What makes Foxy's mechanic unique though is that he can appear at any of the 3 cameras. Also, he can be in more than one, so you may have to check multiple to get rid of him. Something else that the cameras can do is spot Freddy when he's on either side. Chica, like in previous stages, has her own unique mechanic. At a certain point, she will crawl through the hole in your wall and continue to squeeze through. And if you look at her while she's squeezing through, she will stop until you look away. Your task is to find 3 cupcakes that can appear in your office or outside the doors or window. Once you find 3, she will vanish for a short time, but she will come back at random times during the night. Now, being that there are 3 areas where you have to check and look on the cameras for stuff is what makes this stage really chaotic. Freddy being at different doors requires you to get up from the desk and take care of him, but you also have to make sure that Foxy isn't in any camera. But you also have to make sure that you're not looking at Bonnie or you'll lose a camera, and then Chica will appear at random times, so you have to, once again, get up from your desk and check around for cupcakes to get her to leave. This stage definitely captures the classic feeling of FNAF, but also gives the feeling of the Boogeyman where you have to move around and check certain areas. Something else that I feel like Nixon was also doing is in these beginning stages, he is preparing the player for the later stages that will be more difficult. But he also knows how to keep each section on a difficulty curve that is not too hard to beat, but not too easy either. The next section is one that is probably considered to be the most trippy out of all of them. The basement is another level that is heavily scary because of perception. In this level, you play as Michael this time, and when you go into the basement, it looks pretty normal for the first bit. Once you progress a little into the level, you are then required to carry out the task of Ignited Golden Freddy, like burning all the things that the original animatronics had. The level will switch constantly, having you do different things before you're able to leave. As the level goes further though, there are endoskeletons that will try to kill you when you're not looking at them. The basement level switches layout so much that you're doing different tasks all around. Now, there aren't any normal animatronics because, like the story is implied, that you are trying to burn the very things of the original animatronics, like Freddy's hat, Bonnie's guitar, etc., etc. The thing about this section is that it is in a normal household. Any kid would consider the basement to be the scariest part of their house, and no kid would dare to go in there. Nixon, I think, specifically made this section so random with the constant switching layouts to convey the dark mysteriousness of the basement, and I feel like he completely succeeded with this. Being that this space feels much smaller sometimes, and having to deal with the endos, the section feels like anyone can make up something terrifying about the basement when they go into it. Last but not least, we have the attic. This is where you play as Scott Cawthon for the last time. You fight against the Creation, Ignited Golden Freddy, and the Fallen, the endoskeletons from the basement. This is definitely the hardest out of all of them. You have to deal with Ignited Golden Freddy by flashing him when he appears in the cameras and look away from him when he appears behind you within a certain amount of time. The Creation will start in the basement, and he has 3 phases within each section of the house, and he is tracked on the cameras within these phases. Now he will go through the house destroying barriers if you do not use the flash to reset him and prevent him from breaking through the barriers. Each of the Fallen will approach from the doors around you, and each of them have a separate way to tell when they are close to a point when you need to close the door. Now similarly to the basement, I feel like the attic is also a place where kids think the most scary things are and they never want to go there. Now this makes the animatronics much more scarier, and it's absolutely terrifying. Now Nixon, I think, had put a really good amount of effort into each section of this game, making it the scariest possible. There's a lot of unique mechanics as well for the difficulty. He told an incredible story based off of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I think these are the reasons why The Joy of Creation is considered to be the scariest FNAF fan game of all time. But yeah guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button and turn on notification bells. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay awesome, God bless, and peace.